Have you ever found yourself deleting a text you were about to send because you knew he wouldn't care? Your finger hovered over the send button, your heart beating louder than it should for a message so small. And then, with a quiet resignation, you erased it. That moment wasn't about him. It was the echo of an old wound, a memory carried not in your conscious mind but in your chest, in your throat, in the way your stomach tightens as though preparing for rejection before rejection even arrives. It is the silent scream of shame, the memory your body never forgot, even when your mind swore it was over. Shame does not shout. It hides in the smallest gestures, in the way you apologize before speaking, in how you laugh at jokes that cut too close, in the way you shrink rather than risk taking up space. You may think it's just insecurity or bad luck in love, but beneath the surface lies something far more primal. Shame is the exile of the self, the banishment of a voice that once cried for love and was met with silence or disdain. A little girl inside you learned that her needs were too much, her emotions inconvenient, her presence negotiable. And so she learned to perform, to bend, to betray herself just to be allowed a seat at the table of conditional affection. The body remembers every betrayal of the self. That is why your chest tightens when someone interrupts you, why your shoulders ache after swallowing your words, why you dream of speaking with fire but wake up muted. Your mind insists you are fine, strong, independent, capable, but your body whispers another story, one written in clenched fists and restless nights. Heavy, isn't it? That weight you've carried was never meant to be yours alone. Jung once said, shame is a soul-eating emotion. He understood that shame is not a passing embarrassment but a poison that seeps into the roots of your identity. When you feel shame, you do not merely think, I did something wrong. You think, I am wrong. And in that moment, you hand over the keys to your worth, allowing others to dictate when you are worthy of love, respect, or belonging. But here is the paradox. The more you try to deny shame, the deeper it buries itself into your bones. To heal it, you must face it, not as an enemy, but as a messenger carrying the fragments of your lost self. Imagine shame as a shadowy figure in the corner of your childhood bedroom, watching you every time you cried yourself to sleep because no one came when you needed them. It grew with you, silently applauding when you stayed quiet in class, nodding approvingly when you accepted less than you deserved, whispering, "This is safer, this is how you survive." That shadow is loyal, not malicious. It thinks it is protecting you from abandonment, but the cost of its protection is your voice, your freedom, your joy. And you, perhaps without realizing, have remained loyal to that shadow. You have mistaken its silence for safety, when in truth it is a prison made of old walls. There is another image. Think of a tree with roots buried in toxic soil. You may polish the leaves, water the branches, speak affirmations into the air, but unless the roots are cleansed, the tree will always carry poison in its veins. Shame is that soil. It hides at the root level of your being, influencing every decision, every relationship, every moment you question your worth. No surface healing can touch it. That is why, despite years of striving, a whisper of inadequacy still creeps in when someone fails to see your value. You feel it in your body long before your mind names it. The tight throat, the sudden urge to withdraw, the trembling hands when you want to reach out but stop yourself. These are not random quirks. They are the language of the body, the place where shame has stored itself like unhealed scars. The body remembers what the mind denies. And until you turn toward that memory, you will continue to act from it, even if you cannot see it. But here is a radical truth. Shame is not proof that you are broken. It is proof that something once mattered so deeply that your soul could not bear its rejection. Shame marks the place where love was meant to be and wasn't. It is the scar left by absence, the outline of what you still long for. To face shame is not to drown in it, but to follow its trail back to the self you abandoned under pressure. That self has not disappeared. She is waiting, watching, trembling with the hope that one day you will turn around and see her again. You may be wondering, how do you even begin to face what you've spent a lifetime avoiding? How do you turn toward a feeling that once shattered you, that still threatens to silence you whenever you get too close to the truth? The answer is not in resisting the fear, but in uncovering the hidden strength already living within you. But how do you find your voice again, when fear has held it captive for so long? The key lies not in fighting the fear, but in turning to face the cue. Its strength you've always carried within. In the next part, we'll begin to unlock it. Beneath the armor you've worn for years, beneath the practiced smile and the careful way you measure your words, there is a quieter truth. Shame did not only silence you, it trained your nervous system to live on guard. That's why the body always speaks first. Before your mind can rationalize, your stomach already knots, your shoulders tighten, your throat closes. The body is a historian, recording every humiliation and disappointment, refusing to let them be forgotten. And yet, within that same body lies the first doorway to healing. When you notice how your chest constricts when you want to speak, that is not weakness, it is a map. The ache in your back after a day of pleasing others is not random, it is a message. Healing begins the moment you stop dismissing these sensations as burdens and start reading them as letters from your younger self. She does not write in words. She writes in tension, in fatigue, in tears that come at strange times. Each sensation is her way of asking, "Will you hear me now?" Think of the child you once were. Small hands clutching at the air, a voice rising then swallowed when no one came. Her body shook then too. She learned that shaking was dangerous, that stillness was safer, so she froze herself. That freeze has followed you into adulthood, showing up in boardrooms, in bedrooms, in conversations where your lips move but your truth remains buried. You may call it anxiety or self-doubt, but it is the same freeze response. Your body still protecting you with an old strategy. Heavy, isn't it? Realizing you've been living in a body that never fully left the battlefield. Yet this battlefield is not endless. The way out is not through suppressing these responses, but through befriending them. Jung called this shadow work, the courage to face the parts of yourself you've disowned. When you place your hand over your chest as it tightens, you are not just soothing a muscle. You are telling that little girl she is no longer alone in the dark. When you allow the tears to come instead of swallowing them, you are loosening the grip of years of silence. Healing is not about erasing the shadow. It is about lighting a candle inside it so you can finally see what has always been there. Picture your body as a house with locked rooms. Shame locked them long ago, insisting they were too dangerous to enter. But every time you feel an ache or a sudden flush of heat, it is the sound of someone knocking from the inside. Behind each door waits a memory, a fragment of yourself, frozen but not gone. You may fear what you'll find, but often it is not as terrifying as the silence that kept you away. In those rooms are your unexpressed anger, your forbidden joy, your silenced creativity. The body is not your enemy. It is your guide, insisting that wholeness cannot be achieved by ignoring the rooms you've locked away. Think about the times you said yes when your whole body wanted to say no. Your smile may have fooled others, but your body paid the price. It tightened, it tensed, it stored the no you could not voice. Those stored no's add up until one day you wake up exhausted, anxious, or ill, not knowing why. But your body knows. It has carried the weight of every unspoken refusal. And here is the raw truth. Your body will not heal until you begin to honor the no it has been screaming on your behalf. This is not a comfortable path. To honor the body's truth means challenging the patterns that once kept you safe. It may mean letting go of relationships that feed on your silence. It may mean walking away from spaces where you've been tolerated but never cherished. It may mean confronting the martyrdom you secretly carried, the twisted pride of being the one who always sacrifices. That's edgy, isn't it? To admit that part of you has found identity in suffering, but only by naming it can you release it. The body does not heal through force. It heals through attention, Small moments of presence, of touch, of breath. When you notice your jaw tighten, unclench it. When your hands tremble, hold them gently. When your chest burns with the urge to cry, let the tears fall. Each act is a declaration. I will no longer abandon myself. This is how the freeze begins to thaw, how the child begins to trust you again, how the shame loses its grip. You may wonder, though, what comes after this thawing. If the body holds the memory of pain, can it also hold the memory of freedom? How do you create a new pattern when the old ones feel etched into your bones? The answer lies in reclaiming the voice you once silenced, not as an idea, but as a lived experience in your body. But how do you speak from a place that has been muted for so long without fear swallowing you whole? The path forward requires not only voice, but the radical courage to stand in your worth, even when trembling. There is a moment, almost imperceptible, when begins to fracture. You may feel it as a quiver in your throat, a sudden heat rising to your cheeks, a tremor in your hands that says the truth is pushing against the walls you've built. This moment is terrifying because to speak means risking everything your younger self believed kept you safe. But it is also the very threshold of freedom. Your voice is not simply sound, it is the embodiment of your worth. Every time you silence it, you confirm the lie that you do not matter. Every time you let it rise, even shakily, you reclaim a piece of yourself that shame tried to bury. Think of the countless times you rehearsed words in your mind but swallowed them when the moment came. You may have told yourself it wasn't worth the conflict, that keeping the peace was more important. But the peace you preserved was not peace at all, it was submission. True peace cannot be built on the ruins of your own truth. Each silenced word did not vanish. It sank into your body, another stone added to the weight you carry in your chest. You wonder why you feel so tired, so heavy, even after rest. This is why. You have been dragging the weight of unspoken truths like chains. Jung taught that what we repress does not disappear. It waits in the shadows, demanding expression in other ways. That is why your body aches, why your relationships repeat, why your dreams sometimes scream truths you cannot speak by day. The shadow will not be denied forever. But here lies the paradox. When you finally dare to bring what is hidden into light, it no longer controls you. Speaking your truth is not simply a social act. It is a ritual of liberation, a way of unbinding yourself from shame. Imagine your voice as a river. For years, it has been dammed, its waters diverted into tiny streams of sarcasm, passive compliance, nervous laughter. The dam was built by fear, fear of rejection, fear of punishment, fear of abandonment. But rivers are patient. They press and press until cracks appear. And when those cracks widen, the rush of water is unstoppable. That river is not just your words. It is your essence, your creativity, your desire, your fury, your joy. To reclaim your voice is to allow the river to flow again, messy, wild, but alive. There is danger here too, because speaking your truth will not always be welcomed. Some will recoil, some will resist, some will try to push you back into silence because your voice disrupts the roles they depended on you to play. This is where courage is born, not the absence of fear, but the refusal to be ruled by it. Courage feels like trembling legs that move anyway, a voice that shakes but still speaks, a heart that beats too fast but beats with truth. Courage is the sacred defiance of a woman refusing to be erased. You may wonder, what if your truth destroys what you've built? What if people walk away? What if the life you know unravels? This is the risk that holds so many captive, yet the deeper risk is staying silent. Silence will cost you your vitality, your joy, your connection to self. You cannot trade your soul for belonging without losing both. To reclaim your voice may cost you relationships built on your silence, but it will give you something far greater, the chance to belong to yourself. And once you belong to yourself, the relationships that remain will be rooted in authenticity, not performance. Picture the little girl again, the one who once swallowed her cries. Imagine her watching you now. Imagine her wide eyes as you speak a truth she never could. Can you feel how her shoulders would drop, how her breath would ease, how her tiny fists would unclench? Every time you honor your voice, you are not only healing yourself, you are healing her. You are proving to her that the world did not end when you spoke, that love does not always vanish when you assert your needs. That is how the inner child begins to trust you, not because you promise her safety, but because you show her strength. It is tempting to wait until the fear disappears before speaking, but the truth is the fear may never fully go away. The trembling is not a sign you're failing, it's a sign you're crossing into new territory. Think of a bird learning to fly. Its wings are clumsy, its flight uneven, yet still it lifts off the ground. Your voice is the same. Uneven, imperfect, but miraculous in its return. The first time you let it out, even if it's just a whisper, the dam begins to break. But perhaps you're asking yourself, where do I find the strength to keep speaking when the fear feels louder than my voice? How do I keep my ground when the old patterns of silence pull me back? The answer is not found in forcing your way through. It lies in cultivating a deeper anchor, a rooted sense of worth that no silence, no rejection, no shadow can uproot. But how do you plant such roots in soil that has long been poisoned by shame? The secret lies in rewriting the very story you tell yourself about who you are. Every story you've told yourself about being unworthy, about being too much or not enough, began as a survival script. As a child, you didn't have the power to change your environment, so you changed the story you carried inside. You whispered to yourself, if I am quieter, they won't leave. If I am pleasing, they will stay. If I disappear, at least I won't be hurt. These were not lies, they were strategies. They saved you once. But the tragedy is that what saved you then is suffocating you now. The human psyche, Jung taught, is not static. It is a story in motion, a myth unfolding. And when shame becomes the narrator, the myth twists into tragedy. You see yourself as a burden instead of a gift, as an intruder instead of belonging, as replaceable instead of irreplaceable. Every choice bends beneath the weight of that narrative. You accept crumbs because the story says you don't deserve a feast. You apologize for existing because the story says you are inconvenient. You sabotage opportunities because the story says success would expose your fraudulence. But here is the radical truth. These are not facts. They are inherited lines in a script you never chose to write. To rewrite the story, you must first dare to read it aloud. Hold those old beliefs up to the light, not to shame yourself further, but to recognize how misplaced their authority is. The words "I am unworthy" do not belong to you. They belong to the echo of a parent who dismissed you, a partner who belittled you, a culture that silenced you. When you see them for what they are, echoes, not essence, you loosen their grip. And in that loosened space, a new voice can emerge. Imagine your life as a stage. For years, the spotlight has been trained on your shadow, amplifying every insecurity, casting your body into distorted shapes. The audience, the inner critic, the echoes of the past claps for your performance of shame. But what if you turned the light? What if you stepped into center stage not as the character they scripted, but as the author of a new play? The audience might boo. They might walk out. But the play is yours. The role is yours. The spotlight is yours. To claim that role, you must plant new roots. This is where embodiment matters. You cannot merely tell yourself, "I am worthy." Your body must feel it, breathe it, move it. Worth is not an idea. It is a posture, a rhythm, a vibration. When you stand tall instead of shrinking, you are rewriting the story. When you breathe deeply into your belly instead of holding your breath, you are rewriting the story. When you dare to receive kindness without deflecting it, you are rewriting the story. These small acts are not symbolic. They are the soil in which new roots grow. There will be resistance. The old script will not go quietly. You will hear the inner critic snarl, "Who do you think you are?" You will feel guilt gnaw at you when you choose yourself over others. You will face loneliness when people who benefited from your silence recoil from your strength. This resistance is not proof you're wrong. It is proof you're changing. The shadow resists because it knows its reign is ending. Each time you hold your ground through the discomfort, you are teaching your body a new language, one of belonging, of worth, of unapologetic presence. The Stoics spoke of living in agreement with nature, and your nature is not to shrink. Your nature is not to grovel for scraps of love. Your nature is expansive, radiant, unrepeatable. You were not born to be tolerated. You were born to be celebrated. Yet celebration begins at home, within your own soul. Until you can sit with yourself without apology, without shame, without the need to earn your place, you will keep searching for approval outside. That search will never end, because the well you drink from is poisoned. The only way forward is to dig a new well, one that draws from the truth of your essence rather than the lies of your past. Picture that little girl again. This time she is not crying in the dark. She is standing before you, waiting to see if you will embrace her. If you reach out your arms and pull her close, you are rewriting the story. You are telling her you were never too much, you were never too little, you were always enough. Can you feel how her breath would steady against your chest, how her body would finally relax into safety? That is the story worth living. That is the root worth planting. But here arises the mirror moment, sharp and unavoidable. Will you continue performing the script of shame, even as it devours your spirit? Or will you risk stepping into authorship, even if it means burning the old script to ash? The choice is not theoretical. It is in every yes you give, every no you honor, every truth you speak. But how do you hold steady in that choice when the world still tries to pull you back into silence? The answer lies in building practices that anchor you, rituals that remind your body daily of its worth. Rituals are not just habits, they are anchors for the soul. They are how you remind your nervous system day after day that you are no longer the abandoned child but the guardian of your own worth. Think of how shame wrote its script through repetition, the repeated dismissal, the repeated silence, the repeated turning away. To rewrite it, you need repetition of another kind, rituals that whisper safety and sovereignty into your bones until they become truth. It begins small, the way you greet yourself in the morning. Do you rush into the day as if your needs are an afterthought, or do you pause long enough to place a hand on your heart and breathe? That single act says more than words. I see you, I am here. When you catch your reflection, do you glance with criticism, or do you soften your gaze as if meeting a beloved friend? Shame trained you to look away. Healing trains you to hold your own gaze. These are not empty gestures. They are subtle rebellions against the old story. Your body becomes your temple in this new script. Movement is no longer about punishing it into shape, but about letting it feel alive again. A slow stretch that melts tension. A walk that reconnects your feet to the earth. A dance in your living room where you stop performing and let the music move through you. These moments are sacred because they remind you that your body is not just a vault of old wounds, but also a vessel of pleasure, expression, and power. Each movement whispers, "This body belongs to me again." And then there is the ritual of voice. Not speeches to the world, but simple conversations with yourself. Speaking your thoughts aloud when no one is there to listen, just to hear the resonance of your own truth. Reading your words back to yourself in a tone that affirms rather than mocks. Singing even when your voice cracks. Shame thrives in silence. It dissolves when sound re-enters the space. Your voice, even in solitude, is a reclamation. But rituals are not only personal. They extend into the boundaries you set with others. Every no you speak without apology is a ritual. Every yes you offer from fullness instead of fear is a ritual. Each is a line in the new story you are writing. Boundaries are not walls. They are sacred markings on the map of your worth. Without them, your story will always be invaded by others' scripts. With them, your story becomes clear, even if others resist it. There will be days when shame resurfaces, when the old story knocks at your door with a familiar sting. On those days, the ritual is not perfection but compassion. Instead of asking, "Why am I still here?" you ask, "What do I need right now?" The difference is everything. Shame feeds on self-criticism. Healing grows through self-tending. This is how the body begins to trust you, not because you never falter, but because you never abandon yourself when you do. Imagine this over time. Weeks of small rituals, months of boundaries honored, years of voice reclaimed. Slowly, the soil of your roots changes. The toxic ground is replaced with fertile earth. The tree that once grew twisted under the weight of shame now rises straighter, its branches stretching toward light. The fruit it bears is no longer fear, but connection, creativity, presence. This is not fantasy. It is the natural consequence of tending to your inner garden with consistency. And here lies the deeper gift. Your healing is not just for you. When you shift your story, you interrupt generations of silence. The daughters who come after you will not inherit your shame as their soil. The sons who come after you will not be bound by the same shadows. Even those who once wounded you may feel the ripple of your change. For when one person refuses to carry shame any longer, the whole system is disrupted. This is legacy, not through grand gestures, but through the daily ritual of choosing truth over silence. Still, a question lingers in your heart. What does life look like on the other side of shame? What does it feel like to live not as a reaction to wounds, but as an embodiment of worth? The image may feel distant, but it is closer than you think. The ascent begins not when the shadow vanishes, but when you finally walk with it, no longer enslaved by it. But how do you step fully into that embodiment, into the radiant self who lives beyond shame, when the ghost of the old story still whispers in your ear? The answer is found in embracing not just survival, but expansion, allowing yourself to live a life that shame once told you was impossible. Expansion feels unfamiliar when you've lived your life in the narrow corridors of survival. At first, it almost feels wrong, as though joy is a luxury you haven't earned, as though love is a gift reserved for others. That hesitation is the final trick of shame, whispering that wholeness is for someone else. But the truth is this: you were never meant to live small. You were never meant to shrink into corners or fold yourself into silence. Expansion is your natural state. The unfolding of a self, no longer chained by fear. Picture a woman who no longer apologizes for her laughter. She laughs loudly with her whole body, unafraid of being too much. She loves without bargaining her dignity, without bending herself into shapes for scraps of attention. She enters a room and does not check if she is welcome. She knows she belongs wherever she chooses to stand. This woman is not separate from you. She is you, without shame as her narrator. She is you when the story is finally rewritten. But expansion is not only about boldness. It is about softness too. It is the softness of lying in bed without guilt, of savoring food without shame, of letting yourself receive love without suspicion. It is the softness of being present in your own skin, not rushing to fix, prove, or justify. Expansion means breathing without apology, taking up space without fear, living as though your existence is not a burden but a gift. Can you feel how radical that is after years of carrying shame? Your body remembers survival, yes, but your body can also learn freedom. Each time you choose joy over self-punishment, your nervous system rewrites its script. Each time you allow intimacy instead of pushing it away, your muscles store a new memory of safety. Each time you celebrate instead of diminish yourself, your body learns that expansion is not dangerous but divine. Slowly, the body becomes not just the archive of wounds but the cathedral of your rebirth. There will be moments when the shadow tries to reclaim its throne. You may hear its voice in the middle of a tender moment, whispering that you don't deserve this, that it will be taken away. When that happens, you don't banish the shadow. You turn toward it with a steady gaze and say, "I see you. I honor the role you played, but you no longer rule me." The shadow does not vanish, but it bows. For the first time, it serves rather than enslaves you. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of integration, the transformation of the enemy into an ally, the return of the exiled parts into a unified whole. And here is the most striking shift. When you live beyond shame, your presence itself becomes healing for others. Without trying, you give permission for those around you to be real. They feel it in your gaze that does not judge, in your voice that does not shrink, in your body that does not apologize for existing. You become a mirror of what is possible. Your wholeness challenges their shame, just as their courage will challenge yours. Expansion is not selfish. It is contagious. But do not mistake this for a destination where pain never touches you again. The scars remain, reminders of battles fought. What changes is your relationship to them. The scar on the tree does not stop it from reaching toward the sun. It only proves that storms have passed and the roots have held. In the same way, your scars will speak, but now they will tell a story of survival turned into strength, of shame turned into wisdom, of silence turned into song. This is the ascent. Not perfection, not immunity to struggle, but a grounded, embodied presence that cannot be undone by the whispers of shame. It is the quiet power of belonging to yourself so deeply that no rejection can exile you from your own heart. It is the freedom of saying yes and no without fear, of loving without bargaining, of living without apology. This is what it feels like when the body no longer clings to the old memory but dances with a new one. And yet one final question remains. What will you do with this freedom? Will you carry it only within, or will you live it boldly enough that the world cannot ignore it? Will you settle for survival with less pain, or will you dare to embody the fullness of your light, even when it draws attention, even when it disrupts the familiar? That choice, more than anything, will determine the legacy you leave behind. Legacy is not carved only in monuments or written in books. Legacy is in the way you carry yourself, in the energy you leave in a room after you've walked away, in the ripple of courage you awaken in others simply by being unashamed. Think of the women who came before you, the ones who swallowed their truth so that survival was possible. Their silence lives in your blood, yes, but so does their longing. You are the bridge between what was suppressed and what can finally be spoken. To live unapologetically is to honor them, to give their silenced voices a second chance through you. Consider how shame once convinced you that you were invisible. Now, imagine visibility not as exposure but as offering light. When you speak your truth, you are not only freeing yourself, you are freeing someone else who has been waiting to hear that it is possible. Your courage becomes prophecy. Someone else will look at you and think, if she can stand, maybe I can too. This is how healing multiplies, not through grand speeches, but through the everyday presence of a woman who refuses. Ease to bow to shame. Yet legacy also asks something deeper. Will you create from your healing, not just live in it? Expansion is not only about freedom from pain. It is about what you build in the space where shame once lived. Will you write the book, sing the song, start the work, love with abandon? Will you allow your gifts to take form in the world, or will you let them wither unused? Shame has already stolen enough time. Expansion demands that you live fully, that you risk creating even when fear whispers you are unworthy. The Stoics reminded us that life is fleeting, that every day is borrowed. To live small under shame is to waste what is most precious. To live expanded is to honor the brief, miraculous fact of your existence. Imagine lying at the end of your days asking yourself, did I live as my truest self, or did I perform someone else's script? Did I bury my song, or did I sing it even when my voice shook? These questions are not for later, they are for now. Because the body remembers what the mind denies. And if you deny your expansion, your body will carry that regret like another stone. But when you choose to embody worth, something else happens. The body remembers joy. It remembers love without bargaining, laughter without fear, rest without guilt. Your shoulders soften not because the weight is gone, but because you no longer carry what was never yours. Your chest opens not because fear vanishes, but because love finally has room to breathe. You begin to trust the ground beneath you, not as an enemy waiting to collapse, but as earth that has always held you. There will be people who do not understand this transformation. Some may envy it, some may resist it, some may try to pull you back into old roles, but you will notice that their voices no longer land in the same way. Where once they pierced you, now they brush against the surface and fall away. Why? Because you have anchored yourself in a deeper truth, a story not written by them but by you. This is the embodiment of worth, the unshakable knowledge that you are not defined by others' acceptance, but by your own belonging. So the journey comes full circle. From the deleted text that revealed your old wound, to the trembling silence of the inner child, to the thawing of the body, to the reclaiming of voice, to the rewriting of story, to the daily rituals that anchored you, and now to the expansion that transforms not only you but the world around you. The body remembers, yes, but now it remembers differently. It remembers your courage. It remembers your laughter. It remembers your worth. And now the final question lingers in the quiet. Will you continue to live haunted by the echoes of shame, or will you step into the fullness that has always been waiting? The choice is yours, but remember, every breath you take in freedom is a seed planted, not just for you, but for every soul who will one day look to you as proof that healing is real.